is Kyle, and you are back watching Knockouts and 3 Counts, and would you look at that? We told you that we had some dope-ass shirts coming in, and we do, thanks to the homies at Face Kicked Apparel. The homie, Sean Stockmeyer, doing his thing. Like I said, I think these shirts came out pretty damn good, don't you, Cory?
Fresh off the presses, my friend. They look pretty good, I would say.
I mean, I would say too, and if you want to get you one of these and you didn't get the pre-order, we've got some extras. So shoot us a DM, whether that's at KO3C Pod on Twitter and Instagram, whether that's at Knockouts and 3 Counts Podcast on Facebook, or whether that's at KO3CPod@gmail.com, whatever suits your fancy. Shoot us a message and we'll get you a shirt. We're back here to talk UFC this time. UFC 253. Huge card between Adesanya and Costa in your main event. And then you've got, for the light heavyweight title, you've got the man who damn near took the throne from John Jones in Dominick Reyes against Jan Blachowicz. Okay, this is another great fight. There was a lot of great fights on this one, even down to the prelims. I know, Cory, you had some of those you wanted to touch as well. Like I said, So, Cory, what were the fights that you were looking forward to? On the early prelims, there was one in particular.
I brought it up in our little pregame for the whole video here, and I just found it incredibly interesting because you normally see the winners coming off these tough series coming essentially on fire into the UFC with a huge push, and they're immediately lined up with a fight so they can keep that ball rolling. Because they don't invest all this money in putting a whole show on for a guy just for them to not fight, essentially.
You would think. I mean, you know those guys are obviously getting their contracts. They may not be for the most money off the rip, but they're getting multi-fight contracts. Well, you would think that, you know, most of the guys that you're seeing on these Ultimate Fighter winners, man, they go on to be the next big thing. Obviously, as Cory's alluding to, in the early prelims, we've got a fight between Juan Espino and Jeff Hughes. Juan Espino was the guy who won the heavyweight season of The Ultimate Fighter. It's been 2 years, like Cory said, since he's fought. He's coming back to make his return here against Jeff Hughes. Obviously, a bad break for Espino. You know, you get all that hype after the, Ultimate Fighter, and if you hadn't mentioned it, man, I wouldn't even have remembered that he had won because it's you know what it is. It's out of sight, out of mind, man. Yeah. He returns here to face Jeff Hughes. We'll do a quick little pick for this one. I mean, Cory, since this was a fight that you were picking on, who do you got?
Well, it's kind of very interesting because it's kind of, not only was he already slightly older when he won the tough series, now coming off a 2-year layoff and dealing with some significant hand surgeries and stuff. It's going to be interesting to see if he still has that fire in his game. I mean, you take that kind of time off, especially when you're dealing with in and out of the doctors and stuff. It's hard to keep that motivation up, you know?
See, you say that, but I also could argue on the devil's advocate to that. You know, you come off such a big win, like winning the Ultimate Fighter and being champion and getting your contract and all that stuff, and then you don't get to fight. I would argue that it may light even bigger fire under his ass and make him hungry to show everybody that the Ultimate Fighter wasn't a fluke.
No, and you absolutely could be right, and I think that's kind of what makes this match so interesting and why I wanted to bring it up to begin with. I do see Juan Espino winning it just because he won the tough show by being so dominant on the ground, and that heavyweight, that's such an advantage because you get on top of somebody and it's so hard to get somebody 265 off you.
Oh, of course.
So
just ask Shane Carwin when Brock Lesnar got on top of him.
So that being said, I do think he's able to pull out the fight. But it's still...
You just want to see if there's going to be ring rust.
I do. I want to not only ring rust, I want to see what like you were saying, what kind of fire does he still have?
I personally think Espino is going to win this one. I think he's going to come out hungry. Obviously, he's got a lot to prove. If I'm picking one, I'm going Espino. I don't know how I think he wins, but if I'm picking one out of these two, I'm going with Espino. But man, if Jeff Hughes comes out and beats an Ultimate Fighter winner, again, that's a good win on his resume as well.
Absolutely.
All right. On the prelims, there was one fight that sticks out to us more than any, and that would be Diego the Nightmare Sanchez as he takes on Jake Matthews. Now, we here at Knockouts and 3 Counts have quite the past with Mr. Diego Sanchez because Diego wasn't such a good friend of our past guest of the show and our homie. Thank you for telling me happy birthday today, by the way. Miles, the Fury Jury, which you can check that link out right there in the top right corner as we interviewed him right before his last fight for Bellator MMA. We've had him in this fight. I mean, he's got a young up-and-coming kid with Jake Matthews.
So, I don't know how balls deep you are on Jake Matthews, not to give it as a sexual reference or anything, but
yes, he was.
He's a beast, dude. He's coming out. I believe he's 4-5 in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. He's very tough in all aspects of the game. I don't really, from all of his matches,
He's 16-4,
but I believe he's 4 out of 5 in the UFC.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless he lost 4 straight fights, which he didn't, or he wouldn't be having this fight. I mean, he's a tough test for Diego. Yeah. A lot of these young, up and coming guys, it keeps seeming like they keep giving them to guys like Diego because they know they're going to really see if they can fight or not, right? Absolutely. But in this fight, I'm going to be honest with you. I love Diego Sanchez. He's a fucking legend. But something tells me that the young buck, Jake Matthews, is going to get the win on this one.
I don't... This is yet again the reason why I wanted to bring this fight up is because I love having... When I get put on the camera like this, it kind of helps my gears run in my own head about how I see the fight playing out. So, Jake Matthews is a hell of a fighter, and so is Diego. But Diego is definitely a lot more scarred from battle, I guess you could say.
Oh, there's not even an argue. That guy's got so much scar tissue. I mean, he can give you a box of tissues with
that being said, he still has that fire. I seen it even in his last fight when he was fighting somebody that was essentially seemed like twice the size of him in Michel Pereira. That was an interesting...
Who was just at the XFC tryouts, holding pads and all that good stuff for SFS. But hey, speaking of those XFC tryouts, we've got the return of Kenny the Boss Cross coming, but I digress. Before he makes his return to the cage, November 11th for XFC on NBC. So stay tuned for that.
Shit. On NBC, stepping up, big game moves, huh?
Making big boy moves. He got him that contract over there at them tryouts, but I digress. Like you said, good fight with Pereira.
So real quick, to jump off of the topics of actually picking, it's interesting to see all these networks all of a sudden jumping on the MMA market, huh? You got
NBC's kind of been in the game for a while though, because they've had PFL for a while.
Well, okay, so they had PFL, but PFL jumped over to ESPN. So now they're bringing in, what'd you say, XFL? XFC.
They were mainly a Brazilian-based promotion, but a lot of guys from America have went to go fight over there. I mean...
Well, not to interrupt you, but on top of that, the fact that CBS Sports is also moving Bellator from Paramount to CBS.
I think that's a great move for Bellator because everybody wants to talk about Viacom this and Viacom that. Them being on CBS is a national network. More people are going to see those fights because of it. And again, like we mentioned with Miles, I'm happy to see it so that there's more eyes on the homie.
I think it really speaks to the positive that Dana really did with pushing the fights through in the quarantine. I think that had
I wouldn't argue that at all. I mean, you got to realize, I mean, for the vast majority until the playoffs got started and everything like that, I mean, MMA really was the only sport. I mean, granted, right now we're getting to see football, baseball, basketball, all that stuff come back.
And then did you still see what the numbers for last week's Colby Covington versus Woodley fight did?
No, I didn't.
That was on ESPN Plus and still did over 1 million views.
I mean, that fight had a lot of heat coming into it. I mean, I don't know. I think we might have seen the end of Tyron Woodley here.
It would be... I would like to definitely see him take a step down an opponent to see if he still has it. Because one thing that I think a lot of people are failing to mention when they bring up the fact that Tyron's lost it and he doesn't have it anymore.
He's fought top-tier guys. It's not like we're talking about bums here.
But he was the champion. He was supposed to be He was in arguments as the GOAT. He was supposed to take
GSP's and I mean, at a certain point, once you get to that level, you have to be judged.
Yep.
You have to be judged at that thing. And quite frankly, I don't think a step-down fight would be a bad idea for him, but you also have to take into effect that if you have to take into effect that if he can't fight at the top of the weight class and be able to beat the top people in the weight class, man, it's. I mean, that's
he ain't getting younger,
right. He's not getting younger.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
and you only get so much time in this sport.
Mhm.
But let's jump back on topic.
Yeah.
We've got a huge card here at UFC 253. Not going to go through all 5 cards, but in your first 2 cards, 2 fights, a couple of names that really kind of jump out to me are, I'm a big fan of what I've seen of Hakeem Dawodu. Don't know how to say that.
Hakeem Dawodu. Close. You're very close.
Right. I've been a big fan of his fights.
Mhm.
I like the way he fights. He's going to be taking on Zubaira Tukhugov.
Tukhugov, I believe.
Where do you see Roth? There's a G-O-V. I see Gov. I don't see Roth.
Russian. That's how.
Damn you Russians. Learn how to spell. But I mean, it'll be a good fight. It's a featherweight bout. You've got Dawodu, who is 11-1, and Tagara, who's 19-4. I mean, it's gonna be a good fight, but I don't know, man. I'm a real big fan of the young cat, Dawodu. I think we might see another knockout.
So Zubaira is one of the guys coming from Dagestan, kind of in the Khabib family. He's known to train with him and stuff like that. But what's interesting is he's not much of a wrestler. He actually is a striker. So that being said, I think Dawodu's got way faster hands.
He's way quicker
faster.
And he's way cleaner.
Yep.
Not only is he faster, technically he's cleaner. If you watch the man punch, I mean, he's got power, but he's fast and precise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another trait of the champ, Israel Adesanya, who we will talk about in a little bit here in this video. Another woman who
Dawodu by knockout, by the way.
So we're 1 for 1 for each other. Well, 2 for 2 technically. 3 for 3 actually.
Oh, I didn't actually get.
You didn't pick the Diego one, so who do you got? Hot seat, motherfucker, pick one.
Jake Matthews.
So
hopefully decision, because I don't want to see Diego get finished.
So we're on the same boat on all 3 fights so far. I've liked what I saw out of Sijara Eubanks as well, from her time on The Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that. I mean, she showed that she's willing to give anything to make it happen by cutting her dreads off to make weight on The Ultimate Fighter. I don't know as much about her opponent, but
Caitlin Vieira?
Yeah, I don't know as much about her.
She is an absolute monster. She only has 1 loss on her record, and that was when she actually came back from just giving birth to a child, if I'm not mistaken.
You got 10-1 versus 7-4, and Vieira is ranked number 7 versus the number 13 ranked Eubanks.
Well, Eubanks actually is. This was a very short notice fight, because if you guys remember and are as balls deep as I like to be, she actually just fought 2 weeks ago.
Yep, I do remember watching her fight,
and
correct.
She got the win. I believe it was a decision though, so she actually went through the whole 3 rounds with her opponent. It wasn't necessarily, it was a dominant win, but it wasn't something that was super easy. So for her to jump back in 2 weeks notice, I think that's going to be a huge test on her will. And then on top of that, Caitlin Vieira is a beast.
You say that, but yet fucking Chimaev just made himself $294,000 in 3 fucking fights. This guy about made $300,000. So big ups to you, young buck.
Did you hear the news with that too?
No.
Dana said his next fight is top 10 opponent main event.
It should be. He's killed everybody he fought in to fight 3 times in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree.
He deserves something.
I agree.
He deserves something.
It's going to be interesting who they actually pick for his opponent. Sarge Eubanks.
Sarge Eubanks
is an absolute beast as well. I actually wasn't as high on her until about 2-3 fights ago. She started to kind of turn the corner in my book. She
definitely turned a corner in her skills in the last few fights. There's no argument there.
She seems like she's actually starting to.
Well, I mean, dude, she's worked her way into the top 15. She's ranked number 13 at this point. I don't know though, man. Something about this fight, I still feel like Vieira's going to win this fight, but it's going to be a tough fight. Eubanks isn't going to come in there and just let her win.
No. I think coming off of a quick turnaround fight while going to a decision, I think this one more than likely will either go to a decision as well, but I think you hear a lot of fighters talk about overtraining, and I think when you take 2 fights back to back, and especially when you weren't necessarily expecting it, you might end up in that boat. So I'm going to go Caitlin Vieira.
All right. Let's get to the first fight on the main card that really is one that I'm looking forward to, and that's just because of the performances that we've seen from this guy so far in the UFC. The next fight that we have on this card, according to their lineup, if they go by this, it's going to be Kai Kara-France versus Brandon Royval, excuse me. Number 7 ranked Kara-France versus number 9 ranked Royval.
Now, who were you saying you're a fan of here? Kara-France?
Kara-France.
Okay. Now,
I don't know. I just like the way he fights. I just like, I don't know, just something about his style. I just enjoy watching him fight. And, you know, I've said this, you know, I'm a big fan of the ground game. I love seeing, you know, guys have technical jiu-jitsu matches and stuff. But my number one thing, and this comes from me being a fighter myself, I feel like whether we're talking a jiu-jitsu match, whether we're talking about a boxing match, whether we're talking about an MMA fight, I feel like you should always be trying to finish the fight.
Yeah.
I feel like, guys that do that, I enjoy watching fight. Mm-hmm. Not because I can't enjoy a 5-round fight, but to me, I mean, I've never understood, so the guys that always say, oh, I want it to go all 5 rounds. I've never understood that, right? And here's why. Because my mindset when I went in the ring was always get in, get out, and take them out as quickly as possible. But, hey, that's just me. So that's my personal reasoning on being a fan of Kai Kara-France. I mean, he's got a tough fight here.
So Royval's coming off of the win off of Tim Elliott. That was his first fight in the UFC. He had a fight in the Contender Series before that, but he won but did not get the contract, if I'm not mistaken.
You got 21-8 for Kai Kara-France versus 11-4 for Brandon Royval.
So I think there's definitely a reason why they put this on the main card, and it's not.
Oh, dude, because they know these two are gonna bang, dude, and that's why, like I said, for me, not that I'm not looking forward to all these fights, man. I love watching these fights, but after years of watching fights and being at so many fights, I mean, holy God, I can't tell you how many fights I've been at, but it's. The fights that jump out to me are the ones where I know going into it, either they're going to scrap or it's going to be a real chess match on what happens. Those are the fights that jump out to me. In this one, with these two guys' styles, I feel like you got fireworks written all over it.
Absolutely.
If we're making picks for this fight, I think it's pretty clear to know who I think's going to win. I'm taking Kai Kara-France, and from everything that I've seen in the UFC Embedded series that they've done so far in the 4 episodes that have been released, you know, he's another one of those guys coming with Izzy. You know, they're all training for the same thing. They talked about how they were all quarantined together, how they were, you know, you're only focusing on the fights. Locked themselves in the gym. They quarantined themselves with just the people they were training to prevent COVID, which is very smart. But again, that's how you know that they're taking this serious. And being around somebody like that, or like the champ, I feel like not only just the way he fights, but the mindset for Kai Kara-France is going to be the difference going into this fight. So for me, I'm going with Kai Kara-France, and I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to call him knockout. What do you got?
I agree with you, except for who's going to win. I think Brandon Royval's going to win.
We've got a difference!
I think he looked very impressive in his win against Tim Elliott, and Tim Elliott's somebody that's notoriously hard to get out of there.
I agree.
And I think Kai Kara-France, even though I agree with you...
Unless there's a joint there, Tim Elliott will stay.
I agree with you about...
The joint, I know, it already been proven.
About Kai Kara-France, I do think he is an absolute beast, but I think when he starts to get punched up a little bit, he has the tendency to just kind of fall onto his shield.
To get wild.
He kind of falls onto his shield and shells up. And he loses his ability to get off. Okay. And I think with the style that Royval showed in his first fight in the UFC, I think that's what we're going to see come pay-per-view night, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to completely reverse your pick, knock out Royval.
All right, so we're both predicting knockout just the wrong way. As you can see, this fight's probably going to have some fireworks to it. Who do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Tweet us at KO3CPod. Tweet me at Detroit Knockout if you think I don't know what the fuck's going on. But if you think this long-haired bastard don't know what's going on, go ahead and tweet him at FightFan from the 313. Hit him up. All right, we're to title time.
Ooh.
So
the most under talked about title fight of the year. Dominick Reyes, Jan Blachowicz.
All right, so since you started it, who do you got?
I think the title should be being defended here, and I think this should be his first title defense. So with that being said,
he didn't beat Jones, dude. I mean, it was a close fight. But
I went and watched it back multiple times.
No, and I hear you. And I thought that I think there's an argument for him winning too. But again, like we talk about in a lot of these videos, you have to beat the champ.
Yeah, I agree.
And unfortunately, like the guy, hate the guy, whatever you want to say about John Jones.
He let off in the fourth and
fifth. He let off in the
because
fourth and fifth. But that wasn't even my point. Not only did he let off in the fourth and fifth, you also got to remember, bro, John Jones had been champion for years. So you gain a little bit of, I mean, I'm not saying you should get a biased, but there is that championship advantage, and I do feel like it's warranted.
The reason why I say that is because I feel as though Dominick Reyes hasn't been getting the push that he deserves, rightfully.
Well, of course, UFC. But again, that was also his first real big fight. I mean, yeah, he was moving up before Jones, but that was his first big one. I think if he comes out here and say he knocks out Blachowicz, people ain't gonna be able to say shit then, because he's gonna be the light heavyweight champ, especially now that Jones is gone.
Yep, no matter what, it's new.
And he just had a camp switch. He's training with his brother,
no matter what,
too.
it's new. It's not a camp switch. He's been with his brother the whole time.
Okay, but I just saw in Embedded he's got his brothers in his corner for this one. As far as the fight, if I'm picking one, look, Blachowicz is very good, and he's very unorthodox. He's hard to deal with. But I feel like the difference in this fight is going to be the size difference for Reyes, and the fact that for being a guy like that, he's decent at using his range. Absolutely. For Blachowicz to be able to do any of the and for all the things that Blachowicz likes to do, that's going to be very hard to do against a guy that's not only that tall, but that can be that versatile with his shots
still
as well.
With the length.
Right. So for that reason alone, I think the light heavyweight champion when we leave this fight is going to be Dominick Reyes. I think this one's going to go to decision.
Do you?
But I think it's going to be Dominick Reyes.
See, I think there's no way that these two go to a decision, because I think the way that Jan Blachowicz wins this fight, if he does win the fight, is that Polish power, and I think how he implements that on somebody like Dom Reyes is he pushes the pace, gets in his face, catches him before he's able to circle out, and lands with the power, or is somehow able to take him down, which I don't see happening, because even John Jones wasn't able to take him down. And John Jones is incredible wrestler.
So you're going with Blachowicz?
No, I'm going with Dominick Reyes. I think he's going to be able to stop.
But you think he's going to finish him? So we got the same pick. Corey thinks it's going to be a finish. Is it knockout or submission?
I think it's going to definitely be knockout towards the third or fourth. I believe that it's going to make it through the initial
feeling out stage.
And then I think that Dominick Reyes, honestly what's going to happen is something similar to what happened to Chris Weidman, but not quite as fast.
Okay, I can respect that.
I think he's going to be circling out away from the power hand, wait for Jan to try to throw a bomb over, duck, and just hit that longest of long straight lefts straight to his chin. And
if we're talking about long straight shots, we can't go there without talking about the champ, Israel Adesanya. There's been a lot of back and forth between him and Costa.
For good reason.
Very much so, and I'm not saying there's not, but I have to give credit where it's due. And watching this, Adesanya has made a lot of good points. Because Costa's saying, oh, you're skinny, you're skinny, you're skinny, you're skinny, you're skinny. But like Izzy said, everybody says he's skinny until he starts hitting you. And here's where I think the difference will be in this fight. Paulo Costa is going to come out for the first 3 rounds and is going to try to knock his fucking head off. That's a given.
Absolutely.
But I think the difference in this fight is going to be this, very simply. Very few people in the UFC are able to move the way Adesanya does and be able to make people miss. And the very same thing that you just said is going to help Reyes, I think, is going to be the key to victory for Israel Adesanya to keep that belt. I think Costa's going to come out like a house of fire. I think by the 3rd round, Izzy's going to have figured out his timing, and I feel like he's going to chop apart his leg until he catches him with a shot. If I'm picking this one, I'm going to pick Adesanya, and he's going to finish him in the 4th round.
4th round, okay. So you're kind of feeling how I was feeling. They're going to go through the feel out.
I think they're going to. Well, Izzy's going to have to weather the early storm. If he gets through the second,
there is no feel out with Paulo Costa.
No, there's not. That's why I'm saying he's going to have to weather the early storm. But if he gets through the 2nd round, Paulo Costa's in trouble because he's not going to. I don't care. You could say whatever you want about how good a shape this guy's in. He will not have the gas tank to go full 5.
When you're that size and
you're making it to 185.
He cut a lot to get to where he's getting to, and we're not even at weigh-in day, so
that's my point. I don't see him being able to last through a full 5, because of his size, but more importantly, with a guy like Izzy, if it went the full 5, imagine how many leg kicks that takes.
Yeah.
And with the way Costa comes forward and the big tree trunk's legs, if I'm Adesanya, I am chopping that motherfucker down like a redwood.
See, let me preface this with the very first thing as I think Izzy is going to win this fight. I think if I was to put money on it, I would bet Izzy. But for some sneaky reason, not just catch him, I think he could do kind of what he did to Uriah Hall, Paulo Costa. Because if you go back and watch that fight, not that they have a super similar style, but they definitely have their similarities for sure. Uriah Hall and Israel Adesanya. Both of their styles are definitely more based on the feet. They're both kind of throw some unorthodox techniques, mostly straight punches, so on and so forth. Paulo Costa was able to eat a lot of those punches, work his way in past the initial barrage, and just do to Uriah Hall's ribs. And the one thing, I'm skinny too, so I feel you, Izzy. But us skinny people, we feel them body shots, man.
I've said this before in prior videos and prior shows. If you listen to anything in the archives, I have said on multiple occasions on this show, the worst punch I ever took in a fight was in my very first boxing match, and it was a shot to the liver. It felt like a body shot, but the delayed reaction that sometimes you get from body shots is crippling. And I could see where that could be an issue for Costa. But he has to be able to get close enough to hit him. And the other thing that you didn't mention is that not only is Izzy good at using his reach, he also can use the clinch very well. So if he comes in and tries to use that, those long arms are going to be able to frame him to keep him away. And the question ends up being, how many of those shots can Costa take? Well, I've made my pick. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Adesanya or is it going to be Costa?
Like I said,
and how does he win?
My little rant there. I think Adesanya does pull it off, but I don't see it being as easy as he's hoping. I think
how and when?
I think you might be. It's so interesting because we haven't seen Paulo Costa in a 5-round environment. He definitely got tired in the 3-round fight with Yoel Romero,
right? And
because he tried to bomb on him for the initial.
And you think with all the shit talking, he's not going to try to do that in this one?
I do.
Especially, his coach. And that, too. His coach is like a little annoying gnat.
Valid Ismail?
Somebody smacked the shit out of that guy. But anyway, who is it? Who's going to win?
Israel, like I preferenced in the beginning of my pick. But, man,
this fight interests him, but as you can see, we're both on the same page. I think the last style bender is going to keep the title, and we've got some great things coming for you here on Knockouts and 3 Counts. In the month of October, we will be bringing you the return of Kenny the Boss Cross with his first fight here with XFC on NBC. We will also have the return of Brett Big Dog Martin, who will be taking on Bigfoot Silva for Tora MMA in Florida on October 30th. We've got, and we might have a certain Detroit superstar coming soon. So stay tuned to all of our social media at KO3C Pod, Knockouts and 3 Counts on Facebook, and you can check me out at Detroit Knockout, him at Fight Fan from the 313, and until next time, and in the in-between time, peace.